Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
It's a beautiful Friday morning from here in Lagos, Nigeria. You're welcome. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Well, needless to say, we talk about this all the time, and that's the fact that we all need to get involved, so to speak. And an opportunity hereby beckons tomorrow, especially in Lagos, where the local government elections is going to hold. Interestingly, in order to facilitate that, the Lagos state government already announced restriction of movement of people, I think, from like 8 a.m. until about 3 p.m. Just so that, you do not give yourself any excuse for doing anything other than to be a part of that process. Don't make any assumption. At least that's just a counsel. Don't make any assumption and saying your vote is not going to count, because if you do not vote, we will only the votes that are seen will be counted. So it'll be like, having money that you do not spend, or having opportunities that you do not take advantage of. And that definitely is not going to, work in anyone's favor. Let's start now to begin to demonstrate that we really want change. And the only way we have, at least for now, agreed to facilitate this change is through the ballot boxes.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of people might be asking, why do I need to be a part of this? First of all, that should not be a question, but let's just indulge ourselves, right? We ask questions. There's never a stupid question, they say. Maybe just a stupid answer. But that aside. So in case you're wondering why, it goes without saying. A nation is only as strong as the smallest units.
Yeah.
And we can go back to the family, the community, and then build it up until we get to the bigger nation. So if we don't have strong families, maybe that's a conversation for another day, but let me just go wider to the community, which is, in this climate we have estates, we have local council development areas or local governments. Now, those are smaller units of bigger states, of a bigger nation. So if you don't have a strong local government, a local council development area, whatever term. Oh, by the way, Ogun State is also conducting elections as well. So if you don't have a strong, small unit, it's really just waste of time expecting a stronger, whole, as it were. So if you want to ensure that those changes start from the root and, of course, blossom into the bigger picture, then we need to ensure that our leadership recruitment process, remember that? That was a big conversation we had yesterday. And I'm glad that a lot of Nigerians actually wanted to be a part of that. We got a lot of mails. We couldn't take all of them, but I took time to read all of those mails, and I saw the fact that Nigerians, on the one hand, are very interested in this leadership conversation. But don't just send us a mail. Yes, we appreciate those mails, but go out and exercise your franchise, right? Ensure that you have a say. Like he said, if you say votes won't count, maybe partly because there's not much votes to count in the first place. And you need to be a part of the process. If people know that a lot of people will be scared away and they will not be a part of it, then rigging will be very, very easy, because, less eyes and all to monitor the process. So it goes without saying, we're indulging ourselves by answering these questions. Why is it important to be a part of it? It is important because it is where you stay, and if you do not ensure that at least your immediate environment, your immediate border community is sorted, then I would say that you don't have a right really to point fingers and say, why is this not being done? Maybe you are the problem.
And, bitter pill to swallow, no doubt, how we also contribute to things working or not working. I recall that, there's been a lot of complaint about how strong or how efficacious the local government system is at this time. It isn't, a brainer. I think the least we can do is to do what we can at our various levels. The National Assembly is playing its part. The federal government is, doing the bit they can constitutionally to intervene in the issue of, local government autonomy and all of that. But because I recall, and if that autonomy comes and you do not have the kind of persons that you want to run your affairs in that government, then I think the problem is just right there in our faces. I also always talk about this, with euphoria, how that in the Third Republic, the botched Third Republic, they thought the local government system was very, very strong. The local government chairman was very strong. The councillors were very, very efficient. They had very, very good interface with people and stuff like that, such that you could see competitiveness from local government to local government. It was very, very strong. And if you would recall the comments that's been ascribed to the president of the Senate recently, that we need to go back to the effective local government system. By the time we get back to that, level, that level of government, make that level a little more efficacious, the kind of development that we want would definitely get to us. But we need to ensure that the people that are in office are efficient. This is Lagos. And Ogun State is also having, and who knows, pockets of other states are going to be having pockets of elections, to recruit local government officials, state government officials, and stuff like that before the big one in 2023. But in the meantime, let's do what we can. So please go out and vote. There's going to be a lot of security. If we could conduct ourselves before the unfortunate event of 2010-20, most certainly there is a lot that can be done by us Nigerians, especially the young people. Just go out and vote. Use the power that you have.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Well, that's
the power that we have, right?
Yes.
Switch to newspapers.
Well, the power that we have right now is to take a look at the dailies this morning and tell you some of the things going on right there. Let's begin with the Guardian newspaper this morning. And this is what the Guardian leads with. Anxiety as Cotonou court adjourns till today, returns Igboho to cell. That's the lead of the paper this morning. And outcome will favor us, says Igboho's aide. FG presenting 3-point complaint against Igboho. Igboho wife looked pale in court, say eyewitnesses. There are still a lot of talk around exactly what is he being held for in the Republic of Benin. Is it related to what the federal government needed him for and stuff like that? All of that conversation you could find on the front page of the Guardian newspaper leads you to page 6, where the story continues. Right under the pictures you see there, airlines count losses, struggle over disrepair at Lagos Port Harcourt airports. Faulty airfield lighting cut off night operations at MMA 13 years on. Wow. Just wow. I'm using your words now. And this is not something, I remember having a conversation on one of our programs here with the Minister of Aviation and asking, look, what is it? Why must we spend humongous resources for negligence of so many years? Isn't there supposed to be some form of system to ensure that the oil continues to run, so there is a maintenance culture?
Oh, yes. The aviation sector is one of the most regulated, ideally. And because of safety issues, you need to dot all the available I's. In fact, even more than all the available I's, cross your T's, ensure that all those checks are done. Any minute, negligence can spill over into something huge.
Yeah.
So, hearing this is quite heartbreaking. And we had the conversation or the debate, the back and forth between the Minister of Aviation and some operators regarding how much is being owed, how much is not being owed, and the rest. So, this is not what we want to have in the aviation industry. Talk more any other industry, hey, this is an industry that, the currency is safety, as it were.
Absolutely. And anyway, guess what the next rider says? Blame, negligence, poor regulatory oversight, experts say. So those are the experts in the sector who know what's up, as we say. The story continues on page 6, beg your pardon, of the paper this morning. And a number of other stories right under the nameplate. WHO NCDC alert to 77% rise in COVID-19 cases. this ought to keep us on our toes, as we say. Lagos announces movement restriction for council polls. Find it on page 7. Nigeria's auto industry loses $10 billion annually. No, $10 billion yearly to petrochemical steel deficits. I'm even wondering how this is a thing. Could we just look forward to 10 years from now and, reverse some of these figures? That's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
We'll take a look at the Nigerian Tribune, the big one. Igboho remanded in Cotonou prison, faces immigration offense trial today. Wife released on bail. FG yet to file extradition charge. And you see this other rider. Why FG's extradition request is invalid, can't be granted. Falano. It's on page 3 of the paper for you. There are 2 pictures on the front page. One shows Nigeria taking delivery of a Super Tucano aircraft in Kano, at the Kano airport, just yesterday. And I mean, there are a lot of expectations, really. Some tell you that this, jet came way, way, way late. But hey, it's better late than never, right? So, as they say, hit the ground running, maybe hit the ground flying or bombarding, as they will say. So it's a good development.
And it's also, while this is cheering, we've been expecting this for about a year or 2 now. Don't also forget the experience of the Alpha jet that was shut down. How do we avert that? Because, as we all know, whatever the aircraft is, it ain't cheap.
Absolutely.
And so, are there things that can be done to ensure that these things don't happen, and beyond the money, endanger the lives of the pilots who work this, and especially the men? It's cheering to hear the army chief saying that he's going to prioritize the welfare of his men, but that's, for now, it's talk until we begin to see some action.
Oh yes, and I'll tell you, seeing these pictures alone, you can imagine the jitters that will send down the spines of the terrorists, whatever name.
Hopefully. One of the fears that we have had is how come they are so well kitted? Let's hope that there is more that the Nigerian army has than just these Super Tucano jets.
Absolutely. Whatever the case, I'm on this side. We're on the side of
certainly,
of Nigeria, the Nigerian military, and we're rooting for them, praying for the best. On top of the nameplate, 2 stories health-related. One is COVID, the other is cholera. I'll take cholera first. 60 die in FCT. That's right, 60. 300 hospitalized in Bauchi. It's on page 5, so cholera is a big one, sadly. And next to that, Nigeria to suffer from inequitable vaccine rollout, FG. It's 3 die in Akwa Ibom. It's a page 5 read. Some other stories on the front page. Only 7 out of over 5,000 medical labs in Nigeria meet international standards, as according to regulatory agencies. Whoa, only 7. I'd like to read that one to get perhaps better context. Does that include the molecular laboratories or what? Anyway, Backpage has sports for you. See that Tokyo 2020, Nigeria in search of 4th gold. I know some men and women that comfortably have enough gold chests, really. But, it's not Olympic gold.
No, it's really very, very disheartening knowing how much Nigeria dispenses every year. And, even of late, you have the athletes themselves, you have their trainers and medical team, and then you have officials of government. And ministry officials also go. And sometimes they are in hundreds. We dispense all of that, and then what do we get?
You know what happens in schools these days, right? Where they tell children, it's not just about coming first. Participation. You get a medal for participation these days. So maybe they got a cue from. You know what? That's the Nigerian Tribune for you this morning. Don't let me let the cat out of the bag.
I don't even know where the cat is right now. Well, you talked about cholera. That's the lead on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And guess what? It's a little worse. That's it right there. Cholera kills 325, afflicts 14,343 in 6 months. So, well, that picture, that image, the news here says cholera killed 60 in FCT and 300 hospitalized in Bauchi. This Daily Trust is digging even deeper to bring us these stories, and it is definitely concerning. The image you see on the front page as the graphics of the representation of where, the reported cases of cholera are from January to June this year. See the images right there. In gray, you have states affected. In black, you have confirmed deaths. And blue would be those who have not been affected at all. The riders there, death toll rises as outbreak spreads to more states. ActionAid calls for state of emergency in Bauchi. How we are responding to outbreaks according to the NCDC. Find all of that on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And right under the image, you see that one. FG fails to file extradition charges as Benin Court remands Igboho. The details you find on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And right above the main story, 2023, we won't impose presidential candidate, says the APC. It's not our duty to stop agitations, ascribed to the military. And 4 policemen, others killed as gunmen attack checkpoint in Enugu. Story you'll find on page 6 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
For the Vanguard, the big one is on extradition battle. Sunday Igboho back in cell as Benin's court adjourns. Supporters assemble at Benin's court. Igboho's wife released. Why FG can't arm twist Benin Republic to extradite Igboho Akinterewa. Yoruba leaders in talks with Benin Republic YCE. Why Igboho can't be extradited without due process. Falano, Erugo, others. It's a page 18 read, and the president's picture, makes it, of course, to the front page. And under that, higher fares likely as aviation fuel price shoots skywards. Talk about pun intended, right? Fuel imported only through Lagos port marketers. Aviation fuel price hovers around 300 naira per litre. Airline operators lament. I mean, that conversation about having, refining here in Nigeria and the rest, It's a page 7 read, and that story about the Lagos polls, of course, is on the front page as well. And Mr. and Mrs., quickly, I told them, that's Mr., by the way, telling Mrs., I told them that married couples call each other honey because marriage is sweet. And Mrs. says, actually, honey is a leftover from the word honeymoon. Since couples have never been to the moon, they stick with honey. Okay? Of course, there's sports news on the back page. The Tokyo 2020 Games begins with less than 1,000 people at opening ceremony.
Whoa.
Yeah, we're going to be exploring that and more this morning. That's the Vanguard.
We'll find out more about that because, you remember that at some point the Olympics was postponed. Now to have 1,000 in the hall, I'm wondering, anyway. That's the Leadership Friday is what's next. And the angle this morning is a little different. Declare bandits, killer herdsmen, terrorists. Northern groups tell PMB. The story is on page 4. And the riders, we have no relationship with killer herdsmen, says Mieti Allah. Gunmen kill 4 policemen, Monarch, 13 others in Benue, Enugu, Nasarawa. Kidnappers of maritime workers demand 90 million naira ransom. All of that you find on the inside pages. There's been a lot of conversation around, the term, bandits and all of that. But, you do your picking yourself right there on page 4 of the Leadership Friday. And right under the pictures there, COVID-19, diaspora remittances reduced by 20%. That's ascribed to the NITCOM boss. Find out what all of that is on The front page continues on page 7. COVID-19 Delta variant kills 3 in Akwa Ibom. Is it coming closer home? This is not the kind of closer home that one would want, but that's what you have on the front page there. 6 Super Tucano fighter jets arrive in Nigeria. Talked about that earlier. FCT cholera death toll rises to 60. Talked about that also, but you'll find the details in the leadership paper, page 13.
For the Daily Times, the lead is on insecurity, saying tough time ahead for bandits, terrorists, as 6 A-29 Super Tucano aircraft arrive. And you see a picture of the aircraft, I think, before it departed the United States. Right, or another 6 to arrive, by the way, in September. That's the caption under that picture. And you see the story on cholera. Death toll from cholera outbreak in FCTA reaches 60, and that's really sad. Especially because this affects, people in rural communities, and there'll always be talks about the response we're seeing concerning cholera compared to COVID and the rest, especially because this has been with us
for longer.
So we can always predict this and know what to expect, but that's the Daily Times for you.
Nigerian News Direct this morning is interested in something completely different from what we've heard so far. That's it right there. Buhari terminates Bala Usman's appointment as NPA boss. Find the story on page 3. But PDP is not letting that go just like that. PDP calls for Bala Amechi probe. The story you'll find on the inside pages. Under the picture there, Nigeria lost 53.26 billion naira to gas flaring in 2 months. That's ascribed to NNPC. We've been talking about containing this gas flaring now for, I can remember clearly, more than 20 years. How far so far? And if in 2 months we lost 53.26 billion naira, exactly what are we talking about here? What is at stake? Clearly, perhaps because, you can't really store them or what, but find the details on the inside pages of the paper this morning.
Well, next is Blueprint. Let's see what's on the front page of Blueprint. Okechukwu to Senator Hanga. Buhari has no 2023 deal with Tinubu, backs APC's consensus. Yes, 2023. You saw that right. Warns PDP waiting to poach on Buhari's 12 million vote bank. Okay. Governing party OK's lobby committees for youth inclusion. Ekiti APC polarized over consensus option. So that's, politics the Blueprint is, leading with this morning. It's at page 6. Read. I see this one. PIB, 3% host communities equity recipe for Niger Delta crisis. That's coming from Dixon. Still a big one. Justifies backlash against Senate over e-transmission of election results. So the Senate or the National Assembly might be on recess, but clearly these issues aren't going on recess anytime soon.
Not likely.
Yeah.
Well, just before we take our break, Daily Independent has this one about 2023 presidency. Buhari's silence on zoning, successor unsettles APC. That's what you have on the front page of the paper, and a number of other stories right there. But that's the much we can take of the papers this morning. We're back to take on the issues for the day. Do stay with us. Thanks for joining us. According to the DPR, information available on the website of the DPR says the daily national demand of petrol in Nigeria is 38,200,000 liters. But that's not all of the story. And about this PIB, one of the issues that's given a number of people, practitioners, concern is a provision that's been inserted, one of which is, well, so many of them actually, but one, of course, the one that we are paying attention to a lot is that of the host communities development fund and all of that, which, of course, you saw some in the report that you just listened to. But there's another provision that says as companies with active refining licenses or proven track record of international crude oil and petroleum products trading will be allowed to import any product shortfall that domestic refineries are unable to meet. Exactly what does that mean? And how does that change anything in the PIB? We have an energy consultant with us. He joins us in our Abuja studio. Olabode Shomi is an energy consultant. Thank you so much for joining us this morning in this conversation. Well, there are so many things certainly giving so many people concern about this one, the host communities fund, this, and then this new one, and so many other things that are being talked about. But then there are those who say the PIB as is a good start, irrespective of its imperfections. What's your take?
No, I totally agree with that. We need to realize where we were, and that helps us to put in perspective where we are. Up until the PIB discussions, even though it's been 20 years ago, the laws for which the industry is governed date back to the 50s, 57 or thereabout, when oil was discovered. And it does not take too much of genius to know that the industry has moved forward since then. Technology has moved forward. The circumstances, the issues with which the internal community deals with things have also moved on. One of the things that has caused is the fact that the industry has not been transparent. The oil industry is probably one of the most opaque, despite its advancement, despite the amount of money that's involved in it. The lopsided nature with which regulation takes place. I mean, the NMPC, with all due respect, is both a player and a regulator. To understand that, it's like understanding that CBN is both a commercial bank and a regulator. So, you know, that does not work for a free market. So whatever the imperfections, which no law is perfect anyway, having a PIB of any nature is a significant milestone in terms of steps ahead.
But then there are those who would perhaps, of course, you know, opinions vary on this. But of all the controversies that have trailed the passage of the PIB so far, which one of them do you think is really, really of concern that as quickly as possible should be given a little more attention than it is right now?
Okay, when we talk PIB and the issues that govern the law, there are the political issues, then there are the technical issues. The challenge is that an issue may be political in terms of the attention that it gets. However, in terms of the reality and how it's able to affect the market, it may not be that significant. And at the risk of even offending my in-laws, because my in-laws are from the Niger Delta, I want to just offer a perspective. The host community percentage, whichever way you look at it, is very wrong politically. I mean, in terms of the percentage. I mean, there is no reason why you want to reduce 5% to 3%. So whoever were behind that advice, they may have their technical reasons, but they are definitely limited in terms of their understanding of the politics of the country. But having said that, the 3% that we're talking about, according to the available statistics, is even higher than the amount that has been allocated to the NDDC. So definitely, we're still talking huge numbers here. So the issue will now be, how do we maximize whatever percentage is there while the politicians sort out the political aspect? Another issue of germane technical concern is the importation of fuel, which has now been limited to certain categories. But if those things are followed to the letter of the law, then there are certain people that will be excluded from this importation, which in essence could mean some of existing members of MOMAN. When a law, any law, limits the participation of people that are already participants in a market, there is a recipe for some amount of chaos. So those are some of the things they want to look at. In principle, in terms of the ethos of what the law seeks to achieve, in terms of the importation limiting and ensuring that we genuinely have capacity to refine, that's fine. But that is in the future. But what happens between now and the future? And those are concerns. Because some of these things ought to be policies so that they are flexible, so that the people can benefit. But when they become laws, they become cast in stone. And the process for amending laws is totally different from the process for amending policies. So those are some of the concerns that one may have to look at. And those things have significantly greater capacity to affect the movement of the industry than some of these percentages that we're talking about.
Which is definitely a major cause for concern, given that, I mean, from what you have also said now, if these, shortfalls, so to speak, of the PIB are that significant, how significant then do you think it will, how significantly do you think it will affect the governance, the problems that it seeks to solve in the petroleum sector entirely?
Okay. I think a way to put it is to look at the significant differences between most developing countries and the developed nations. In the developed nations, the developed democracies, one of the things that they have going for them is established institutions. The judiciary is independent of the legislature, which is independent of the executive, and they all function and ensure that no one person in executive can actually hijack the system. Now, when these laws, prior to the PIB or what the PIB seeks to achieve, we lack transparency in the sector. And the challenge of that transparency has been that there are significant limitations in terms of the investment destinations, investment decisions that will come into Nigeria. At the moment we started talking about the PIB, a lot of IOCs withdrew their funds from investing in Nigeria. Is it also a coincidence that during that period when funds were stopped from being invested in Nigeria, I'm talking about between year 2000 and now, that was when they discovered oil in Ghana, that was when they discovered gas in Tanzania, oil was discovered in Sierra Leone as well, and all the other places within the African continent. Is it a coincidence? The fact is that monies will not be held in escrow, simply waiting for Nigeria to get its act together. These are investment funds. They need to be invested somewhere. Now, with the PIB, we have finally gotten our acts together, at least in the eyes of those who are bringing in FIDs. So we expect investment decisions to be made. And that is why I said a PIB, no matter how faulty as it is now, is significantly better than a no PIB in the short and the medium term for us. Every law is a work in progress. You put laws into the public, you look at how it affects the public, then you amend it. These laws can be amended. So in the terms of the realities of how it affects people, how it affects the industry, it can be amended going forward. But for now, let the laws be passed, let funding come into the industry, let capacity of local people be developed, let the industry, the local industry, the domestic market be grown, and let's start the genuine process for industrialization.
So when you talk about, local actors, allowing them grow, I know you touched on that briefly, the conversation around holders of active license only allowed to, carry out that business. And I know that some stakeholders in the industry, even TUC, has spoken against that, saying that, this might just build a monopolistic market, as it were. So on the one hand, you say this is at least a good step forward. But looking at some of those provisions, now particularly this active license clause, what are your concerns about it?
I think we also need to understand that any market evolves. When you look at the origin of the oil industry itself, the oil industry started around 1860 in the US. And it was an all-commerce game until Standard Oil Company, the Rockefeller Group, came up with a way of standardizing the process. Now, when you look at all those things and everything that happened before they came to that, there was an evolution. The Nigerian market is not going to arrive maturity overnight. It is true that these laws and these things have these imperfections. But it is also true that in these imperfections, they are going to relate with the public. They are going to relate with the internal public of the industry. They are also going to relate with the external public of those that are outside the industry. Now, it is the push and pull from this interaction that will cause a critical mass of pressure upon the laws, upon the players, and provoke change. There is no way, absolutely no way, that anybody is going to remain monopolistic forever. So what is important, and I'm talking as from somebody who is a player and somebody who is interested in getting something moving, is that let us start. Yes, we may start imperfectly, we may start with one leg, but I'm sure along the line we'll be able to put both foot on the ground and ensure that there's progress. We can spend too much effort analyzing the issues and arrive at what is called analysis paralysis. So rather than spending too much time talking, let's get some activities going, let's get some things doing. That would be my strong views on this.
Okay, so let me give you this quote from TUC President, Mr. Quadri Olaleye, on this matter, this particular active license provision in the bill, saying that the labor chiefs are surprised, dismayed, and irritated by the conspiracy to waste another opportunity to fix the sector, noting that from the lawmakers' position and body language, one could infer that they are serving the interest of some few individuals to the detriment of over 97% of the country's population. But the Congress will not allow that to happen. Now, that's not just the view of the TUC. I referenced some other stakeholders in the industry. I'm sure you've been getting these fillers. You think that this will not last for long, but for some people, it will be law. And of course, laws would be obeyed. And you know how long it even took to get to this point in the first place. So what are the options, really?
Okay. First of all, the process of lawmaking anywhere in the world is not peculiar to Nigeria, really, involves lobbying. It is my understanding, to my knowledge, that for all the public hearings that involved industry stakeholders, the TEC had the opportunity to make their own presentation and their own clauses. Maybe it is possible they did not follow up well enough. Maybe they did. I wouldn't really know. But the issue, obviously, from what they are saying is that they feel significantly concerned that the PIB, as currently constituted, does not reflect their interest and does not reflect the interest of Nigerians. And that is their view, and they are strongly entitled to it. My own concern and my own issue really is this. The opportunities that they had to express it with respect to meeting with all the leaders in those committees, did they fully exploit it? Because it is one thing to come and speak in media and grandstand and refuse to do the work that needs to be done. I'll give you an example. In the Senate, there's a joint committee responsible for the PIB. It is a joint committee of the Committee on Downstream, the Committee on Upstream Resources, the Committee on Gas. Two out of the three chairmen are from the Niger Delta and have strong concerns about those things. In the House of Rep, there's an ad hoc committee, a special committee on that. The deputy chairman of that committee is also from the Niger Delta. So one begins to ask, how often, how regular, or did they at all interact with these people to express their concerns? Or did they just leave it in a vacuum and expect that the forces pushing and pulling will actually allow it to be achieved? Because we need to understand and realize that lawmakers are there. They are there to be used by the people, to be used by the forces in the industry. But if the lawmakers are not engaged, somehow they may not achieve those things. Yes, they have set the threats, and I believe that they will achieve it, but it could have been easier and better if there was sufficient interaction before we got to this stage. Those would be my views.
Right, so let me follow up on that point you made about lawmakers being there to be used, as it were, by the people and forces in the industry. Those were your words. Now, regarding lobbying, recall the Senate president making that statement recently. I think it was concerning the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. And that got a lot of people talking about lobbying. And he said that, people should lobby more if they want a particular provision in a law. But Now, coming to reality, the workability of things, there are different interested parties in this PIB, from the government to the politicians, the lawmakers, to the oil companies, to the host communities, and the people, right? So it's one thing for players, companies to want one thing. It's another thing for the people to think, wait a minute, this might not work for us eventually. So don't you think, in terms of lobbying, the person with the most influence, with the most power, would usually get the outcome they want, but is that necessarily the right outcome?
Well, I'd like to use this example in terms of describing lobbying. It's like, look at the person to be lobbied, in this case, the legislator, as a beautiful bride. You have about 5 men who are suitors trying to get the hand of the lady in marriage. It doesn't necessarily mean the person with the richest, the highest amount of money is going to get the bride. Neither does it mean it's the person who is most good looking. There are usually a combination of factors that determine the final decision that is going to be made. The same thing applies with the legislature. The significant issue is that people don't actually try and they assume. The moment you get to sit with a lawmaker, and I'm not saying a politician is going to tell you the truth, or they are perfect people, but it is that these people are also people who go to the same market with us, who have families, and who have interest, and who have a future. So there are a combination of factors that make people to decide. The issue about lobbying is influence. And all influence is not measured by your deep pocket. On the contrary, sometimes a deep pocket can be a disadvantage when it comes to peddling influence. So influence will be difficult to describe in one word, but it is something that everyone has a measure of. As long as you can talk, you have a measure of influence. So the issue is that the more you continue to do these things, the greater you will develop capacity and ability in it, and the more you make legislature and even democracy to be robust. And this is what we need to get to as Nigerians.
One of the other issues that's maybe perhaps, in a way, referencing the earlier conversation, question Kayode asked, is that of the governance. There are those who are asking, if government has already, said, let's privatize NNPC, and then sets up two institutions, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, to hold in trust. And then it is the president that is still appointing the board members and all of that of this company, NNPC Limited. The question then is, how commercially viable can that kind of organization be, from your experience as an expert in the sector, if government is still as involved as recommended by the law?
Okay, when it comes to that, that's not really an oil industry issue per se. That's a governance issue. So this comes to issues of management. This comes to issue of corporate governance, and all of that. My first job was in KPMG, and of course, KPMG is known as the global management consulting firm. And so we did some work then. One of those was the re-engineering of First Bank in the early 2000s. And so I think maybe I got some ideas, some snippets in terms of how certain organizations should work and all that. One of the first things we need to note is that the fact that NNPC is stripped of certain other, what I call distracting activities, enables it to focus. So NNPC's arm or aspects that it's dealing with regulatory powers will be totally stripped of it, and it just focuses on operations, which means it can be either accountable for one thing, and it will not be within itself to also be regulated. And that's a big plus. And that happens to anybody. If you're a newscaster, you are responsible for cleaning, you are responsible for security, all within one organization, you may not be as effective as if you are responsible for one thing. So irrespective of who is owning the organization now, the fact that it's a limited liability company that is focused on operations changes the ball game entirely. That's number one. Number two, as a limited liability company, they are liable to all the laws and activities that are concerned limited liability companies, which means that by law, they must submit their audited reports. So it is no longer the way it used to be when audited reports are discretionary and some of it may not be properly audited. They will submit to the CAC and then they will, so by law, you can actually find out how they spend their money. And they will not have a case of a 50 billion loss in one refinery and you don't really know how the thing took place. All that is going to change. Once that has been set up ab initio, there's going to cause restrictions in the capacity of people to be involved in graft. And so those are significant. So these are things that is irrespective of whoever is heading the organization. It is believed on the long run that as the organization continues to purge itself and it continues to evolve, it will now become a publicly quoted company. It is when it becomes a publicly quoted company that you and I can buy shares in the company with respect to how we can now, have a hand in the pie in terms of how the thing is run. But for now, comparing what this is going to achieve with what has been there, these are light miles ahead. The difference is clear.
But you know that the law is one thing. Activating the law, implementing the law, executing the law, that's another thing altogether. And quick reference, by the way, to the example you gave the other time about the newscaster being floor manager, cleaner, and all of that. Maybe it's an SME, a small business, but I don't think that's the case here that we are talking about. Because, there are those who also had concerns that unbundling the NNPC, for instance, and going along the conversation that the bill is recommending, is, in a way, some people are saying, okay, maybe it's a soft landing because the fears were initially about, privatizing the NNPC was, it's going to go into certain privileged, hands. But now that's not what is happening. So do you think that's a plausible argument for this, so that maybe it's a transition and then after some time government is going to completely hands off?
I think these fears about people owning things, privileged people owning things, is totally misplaced. People own things everywhere. Even the American Federal Reserve Bank has ownership. It's not owned by the government, but that's a different ballgame. Even if certain people own the NNPC, and it will be run more effectively, and it will still do the services that it delivers to Nigerians. I think there's a seismic shift that is needed in the way we look at things, the way we look at capitalism as a whole. It doesn't matter who owns what. It is the effectiveness, the effectiveness of service delivery of institutions and organizations that matter. If NNPC is owned by two people and we get fuel on time, we get it at a competitive price, we eliminate corruption, it attracts foreign direct investment into the country, what difference does it make with that and one that is owned by government and is full of corrupt activities, does not attract foreign direct investment, does not develop capacity of Nigerians? We need to think in terms of what is genuine progress rather than what another person has. And I think that is something that Nigerians really need to help themselves with so that they can get used to how capitalism works. With respect to the law being one thing and how, an implementation being another, that is true. That is true in virtually everything. But however, if there is no law, you are not even going to begin implementation. So having the law is one thing, then having stakeholders forming a critical mass to ensure that the law is effected is another thing. And who are the stakeholders? The media is a stakeholder. Civil society is a stakeholder. SMEs in the industry are stakeholders. Everybody who has a stake, who has an interest, has a right to follow what is happening in the industry, question what is happening in the industry, and hold people responsible that what the law has said must be done. We do not leave it to the goodwill and the good nature and the church mind of people who are implementing to do the best. No, the way society is set up, the way democracy is set up, is that everybody who is connected should put enough pressure on those who are acting on it. We should investigate them to the core and ensure that they do their job. That way, we have a better society for everyone.
How those other critical stakeholders, as you put it, play a role in the implementation of this law for the benefit of millions of Nigerians? That's what we'll take on, among other things, when we return from this break. To see this. Thanks for staying with us. We're still talking about this PIB and the issues arising. Well, we still have Mr. Showomi with us in Abuja. Well, you talked about those critical stakeholders. A significant chunk of that are the host communities. I mean, from the report that I'm pretty sure you just saw and heard, the issues are not just going to go away. There are those, of course, you've seen what the two chambers have passed, and there are still hopes for a concurrence to raise that percentage to 5%. But then there are those who are still referencing the 13% derivation and all of that, especially to these critical stakeholders, the host communities. From where you sit, I mean, you already call them your in-laws, so you probably want to play to them somehow. But from where you sit, from your experience in the sector, how significant an issue do you see this percentage, thing playing out so significantly?
Okay, thank you. They're my in-laws because my wife is from that area. I think we need to understand that one of the bigger challenges in terms of what has happened with the host communities has not so much been the amount of money that has been spent, but the integrity and the judicious nature that was absent in terms of the amount of money that has been spent. What the PIB brings to the table, which is different from what has been happening in the past, is that it sets up a structure for the money to be spent such that the money can be traceable and accountable. And I think that is a significant difference from what had been happening in the past. Irrespective of whatever anybody says, it is possible to take whatever you have at hand now, receive some blessings from God on it, and allow it to bless the people and multiply. If we spend too much effort on the politics, we are going to be limited by the implementation. Having said that, that does not mean that it was politically right for them to reduce it from 5% to 3%. The aesthetics is just not appealing. And they can argue it in terms of the amount of money that is involved. They can argue it in terms of whatever factors, but it is just not a politically correct decision. And for a nation that is at the edge of what it is now, given the circumstances of what it is happening now, there may have been, it allows whatever interpretation is there. But those are the politics of it. But if I were to be in a position to advise and to implement, my own view would be that let's get our hands dirty, let's start working. Because this 3% or whatever percentage it is can still make a lot of difference. And it is my earnest expectation and prayer and hope that a difference is made. The truth is that when you go to the Niger Delta, in virtually every area, you will find certain level of underdevelopment that ought not to be. I've been to every single state of the Niger Delta, almost every local government. I remember about 8 years ago when the late Oronto Douglas was burying his father. And we went to Bayelsa. We traveled from Yenogua to Okoloba, which is the home place and itself. For close to over an hour, our cell phones were not working. This was at the heart of the Niger Delta. So these places are lacking in significant infrastructure. There needs to be something like a Niger Delta infrastructure plan. I'm sure somebody has that. But there needs to be also time frames in terms of implementation of it. I think that some of our stakeholders, rather than just focusing on the amount of money that will come in there has to be a plan in time phase for infrastructure development, for capacity development, and for orientation development. And I think that will equally be as important for the Niger Delta as anything else. I'm sorry if I've offended people by these views, but those are my views.
Well, on that, and as I said, I mean, they are your views, but on that same host communities issue, forgive me, we can't just let it slide because of the experience that you have in the sector. The 13% derivation has been going on for so many years, and those issues that you raise, they are still there. Now, as you said, the PIB already recommends a way in which this percentage of the, set aside or being set aside for the host community's development, how it will come in and how it will be expended and all of that. Do you think it has a significant chance of making a remarkable difference in the shortest possible time for the development of the Niger Delta?
Does it have a chance? Yes. Will it do that work? That remains to be seen. You see, we need to understand that when we set up a framework is a theoretical structure to ensure that something happens. But what happens between theory and practice is a different thing. And that is why I keep talking about stakeholders. Because the laws have been put in place. The structures have been there. Maybe some monies are even released. But it is incumbent upon all of us, even those who are outside the Niger Delta, to ensure that the Niger Delta develops. It is the development and the establishment and the peace in the Niger Delta that will translate to development everywhere else and peace. So my own view is this. The law, the structure, the framework is just the beginning. And it is now left on everybody, including yourself as the media, including stakeholders, including the civil society, to ensure that what has been put in place is checked regularly and ensure that it works. It is not just going to work itself. I mean, the whistleblowing everywhere is not a Nigerian phenomenon. It's in the US, it's in the UK, it's everywhere in the developed world. That people can just be concerned about an area and be interested to see that it works. We need to get to the stage where community development, government business is everybody's business. The usual slogan before was government business is nobody's business. I grew up in Kano and Kaduna, and there's a slogan in Hausa. They used to say, "Aikin government tiba, aikin baban kabar," which means that government work is not your father's work. But that perspective needs to change. Government development is everybody's business, and we must ensure that it becomes everybody's business.
And I think added to that, we must ensure that those voices are heard because, I mean, time and again, people have raised issues. They've talked about different things. And the concern is usually, are we heard? I mean, do we see things that make it look as though we're being heard? But that aside, two percentages or two issues around percentage has caused major debate. First, that 3% for host communities. And of course, the other percentage, the 30% of profit oil, profit gas for frontier exploration. You've not quite touched on that, and I know we're entering the phase of harmonizing eventual assent, and then, of course, this coming into play. Are you concerned about that provision, as some other people are, regarding what is the usual practice and how this perhaps deviates from the usual practice of oil exploration?
Yeah, I'm significantly concerned about that. And I'm surprised that it's gotten less attention than it should. There is nothing wrong in exploiting oil within the frontier basins. In fact, it should be pursued. And that policy, and that law where it puts it is a right step. However, there are certain things that should be matter of policy and not matter of law. That is on one side. The other side is that there are that percentage. We need to understand the wisdom behind it, because when a company makes profit, one of the things it should do is to use to expand itself. And the cost, what a company should do in terms of expansion will be determined in the realities that is on ground at that particular point in time. When you set something as a law and the necessities of the times change, you cannot just change it because a law is sacrosanct. I'll give an example. If for whatever reason, they now discover oil in virtually every area within the frontier basins. Because the law still stipulates 30%, even after it has been discovered, they must still spend that money in terms of looking for oil. So that should have been a matter of policy rather than a matter of law. But that is also on one side. The other side is the percentage that has been set. And I mean, there's definitely some wisdom by those who set it, but there needs to be some understanding in terms of what that is going to achieve. Now, it should be understood that as of today, NNPC as we know it is not profitable. It's operating at a loss. So that 30% theoretically will be 30% of nothing. However, it's not going to be unprofitable forever. So the issue is that when it now becomes profitable, does it mean that all this amount needs to go into this place? There has to be a better way, a more structured way to ensure that whatever we seek to get there, we actually get it. I think it was in 2010, I met, while flying from Vancouver back to Lagos via Air France, I met a friend in Paris during our stopover who was working with ExxonMobil in Naimi. And at that time, he said that they were doing some exploration there. So I understand that it's the same Lake Chad Basin that interfaces between Niger and also, if they have some oil in Niger, there's possibly some oil in the northern areas as well. So it's not a fruitless exercise per se. But the issue is that this will have done better as a matter of policy than as a matter of law. And I think that is one way, one area that that 30% is significantly lacking
in. But as a policy, right?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, it will seem as though getting to this point was a lot of work, clearly, years, but there's still a lot of work ahead. We still talk about the harmonization, eventual assent, hopefully, and of course the implementation, which is another kettle of fish. Based on the rancor, the debate, I mean, take a look at the front page of some of the dailies. We have former Bayelsa State Governor saying that this 3% host communities equity is a recipe for Niger Delta crisis. You have, I've referenced the TUC speaking about that particular licensing provision and the rest. So clearly there's still a lot of issues. Do you think in terms of implementation as well, we'll see this sort of rancor?
Well, as long as interests conflict, and interest will conflict, there has to be an interplay to ensure that, people will interplay to ensure that they win their own interest. So, however, that interplay does not necessarily need to lead to rancor. So, some of these things will continue. The TUC, you understand, is never going to be fully satisfied, and that is the nature of the interplay between the worker and the employer. So some of all those things will continue. But what is important is not really the fact that there is a rancor, or there is friction, or there is disagreement. It is the fact that these interactions, these disagreements leads to the development of the industry. So there has to be the watching of stakeholders to ensure that all these interactions does not lead to a destructive influence on the economy or destructive influence on the industry, but rather a positive contribution and an expansion of the industry. When industries are expanding, you're going to have teething problems. It's like a child when he's growing up. At the stage that he wants to bring out his teeth, he has certain issues, problems that happen. So the same thing are going to happen. The same thing is going to happen to us. But rather, I think, rather than concentrating on the problems per se, we should actually look at how these interactions and this rancor develops the industry rather than the rancors for the sake of the rancor. Those are my views.
Well, just before we round off, very quickly speak to this issue of gas flaring. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we've been struggling with this gas flaring issue for years and years. And here now, as part of the efforts to manage the problem of gas flaring, one of the commissions set up requires upstream operators that produce natural gas to submit within 12 months of the effective date of the PIB and natural gas flare elimination and monetization plan to the Commission. Do you see that being realistic?
Of course, it's realistic. Of course, it's very realistic. I mean, they've been asked to submit plans before now. But the part of the problem in terms of the gas flaring has been the laws that were in place. And some of all those concerns that did not make or did not encourage utilization of gas had been taken care of by the PIB. So we expect and hope that that will end. We need to realize that gas will come both as a byproduct and as waste. Now, until you find a use for that gas, it will always be wasted. It will always be flared. So it is an issue of gas commercialization. As the name implies, you commercialize gas. You turn it into money. And there are so many things that can be done to do that. So it is not just about ending gas, but ensuring that the gas is converted into useful things to the nation. And this is very important because it is in the uses of gas that we can develop our local market and actually genuinely internationalize. Let me give this perspective. We have 774 local governments in Nigeria. There is a possibility that every local government can have an industry, a cottage industry. It could be steel, it could be processing of fruit juice, it could be fertilizer, it could be anything. And all of this can be dependent on gas, either gas as a feedstock or gas in terms of the processing. So all this gas that is causing the chaos in the environment can actually be piped and structured all around the country, and everybody becomes better for it. The importance of that in terms of the long term is not the fact that every local government has an industry, but it means that there will be a depopulation or decongestion of the cities. And that those who will now move to the cities are those who really want to move there rather than going to the cities just to improve their lifestyle. So look at it. You're a manager with a bank in Lagos, and you suddenly found out that there's a cottage industry in your hometown, somewhere in Adamawa, somewhere in Langtang or something, and that given your knowledge of how operations go, you can actually have a retainership with that industry that earns you 40 million naira a month, 40 million naira per annum, and that's about your salary. So if you move to the rural area, you earn what you were earning in Lagos, you obviously spend less, your lifestyle quality improves, and you can do your holidays abroad as you used to do. Why wouldn't you want to go back? I mean, especially if you like where you're coming from. So we are going to talk about even development. There are a lot of things that gas offers. I think we should pay attention to how the commercialization of gas is done and hold this commission and the authority that are going to be set up responsible for genuine development in the industry. And that's that will be the real work of regulation in this case.
Well, holding to account, holding responsible, that's a tough one. I don't know how well we've done with that over the years, but then I guess we have to wait until that bill becomes law. For now, we have to thank you very much for being a part of our conversation this morning. Olabode Shomi is an energy consultant. Thank you so much for your time and thoughts.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine.
Yeah, so Sunrise Daily returns after this break with something exciting. Stay with us.
Team Nigeria's contingent that includes taekwondo, table tennis, gymnastics, canoeing, rowing and wrestling join other athletes from around the world who were ushered into the Olympic Games as it approaches.
You can see our captain, Aruno. Yeah.
With strict COVID-19 protocols put in place by the organizers, every athlete who enters the Games village will stay in the bubble until the conclusion of the Games. In less than 1 week, it will be showtime for the athletes who will be competing in various events.
This is amazing. We're Team Niger, and I'm looking across and I see Team China, I see Puerto Rico. What? Every country is here, and that's just beautiful.
And for some of the country's athletes in events like taekwondo, gymnastics, badminton, amongst others, this will be their first at the world's biggest multi-sports event. However, ex-Olympians who have competed on the same stage have some soothing words for the athletes.
The Olympic tournament comes with a lot of Olympic spirit, The Olympics was created for humans to compete, come together and bond. So I wish them best of luck. And Nigerians will be hoping that we come back with some medals, So expectation is very high. But the spirit of the Olympics is to compete.
As an athlete in the Olympic Games, I'll be able to see and experience the joy of victory and the agony of defeat. And at the end of it all, either you win or you lose, you are all champions, because you are the very best the world can offer.
When we were competing in 2003 in Maputo, we were losing in the semifinals and the finals, but we never gave up. And we did it against all odds. And so you really want to put everything you have into your sport and work your hardest and don't give up until it's over. And hopefully I wish everyone all the success and doing well at the Olympics this year.
Nigeria will parade 58 athletes in 9 sporting events during the Tokyo Games, and the team remain confident of their chances this time after a disappointing finish in Rio 2016, where Nigeria clinched a bronze medal in football.
We're just hours away from the official opening ceremony of the Tokyo Olympics. It's been a long time coming. In fact, it's 2020 Tokyo Olympics and 2021, right? And this is one conversation I wish I had my tracks on and sportswear on, but just imagine I'm wearing that. And this morning, we're taking a deep dive into Nigeria's chances, the build-up to this Olympics. I mean, it's the Olympics, right? How about we have it on Sunrise Daily? And to do that with us, we have joining us from Tokyo via Zoom, Mr. Femi Adetola, PRO, Nigeria Olympic Committee. He joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you for joining us on the program. And here in our Lagos studio, Mr. George Alu, a sports analyst. I mean, you see him on other platforms, but we are commandeering him for Sunrise Daily this morning. It's great to have you on the program.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So let's begin from Tokyo, right? I think that's only fair. Mr. Adetola, how does it feel, really? Some call it pandemolympic, Olympandemic, I mean, tongue twisters and the rest. But this is clearly a different Olympic in a different climate. How does it feel right now?
Well, let me say good afternoon to everybody over there in Nigeria, because we're in afternoon here. It's after 4 p.m. So it's afternoon. The sun is shining and it's a bit hot, you understand? Right. The Olympics as it is, it's still the Olympics, but not the regular Olympics as it is, because this is not coming with the fun that we have whenever we have Olympics across the world. So it's just a strict, very, very, very restricted Olympic Games. But what can we do? We just have to stay by it.
Can you just walk us through how difficult it has been, from the tests to the protocols, the COVID-19 protocols and the rest? From the leaving Nigeria, even before, how has the process been?
Yes, the process started 14 days before leaving Nigeria. You have to, test your temperature 14 days before traveling. Then you have to go to the COVID center to do a test, 96 hours, 72 hours. You have to do that. Then your whereabouts is very important. So you do that, then you proceed to the plane. When we got to to Japan, it was another catch of fish because somebody tested positive on our flight in Mozambique, and so they held us for about 6 hours, doing a lot of tests from one test to the other. At the end of the day, they now say, okay, everybody's going to an hotel for the next 10 days. You understand? So that we're going to be quarantined. But eventually, we were lucky to say, okay, Cote d'Ivoire, you can go. Nigeria, you can go. Kenya, you can go. But these other countries, we are going to delay you, to see and who, that tested positive. That was after about 6 hours that we have been waiting. And you see them, they are very, very strict. They don't joke with it because they have seen what it means, that the COVID-19 is very real and is something, even to this morning, we are still doing tests. If you come into Tokyo, the first 4 days, you can't go out, you go nowhere. And every day you are doing tests. You have to do your body temperature, you have to do your OCHA, you have to do your cocoa. So it's test and test and test. They want everybody to come into Japan clean and you leave Japan clean. So that is how it has been over here.
Oh, well, clearly that's a lot of protocols. But let me bring this back to Lagos Studio. Well, hearing Mr. Ditula, the protocols they had to follow, and I'm sure at some point they were thinking, hope the worst does not happen. How important is it really to host the Olympics? I mean, against all odds, the Olympics is holding. How important is this sporting event?
Very, very important. You know that the Olympics is the world's biggest sports fiesta. And if not for the fact that it is very, very important, I mean, the world would have said, okay, let's forget about it. But don't forget that the Olympics just go beyond what you see out there in the stadium. It's very, very capital intensive. A whole lot of money, billions and billions of dollars go into this. So if the Olympics did not hold, I mean, you are talking about money going down the drain, sponsors losing money, and a whole lot of that. So what IOC considered is, okay, we have to do it under a very safe atmosphere, safety first. That is why they are putting these health protocols in place. But for the Olympics not to have taken place in the first place would have been an outright disaster where you talk about sports and its effect. It's good it is holding under a very safe atmosphere, just like we had Euro 2020. I mean, we saw it just last month, it ended, and at the end of the day, the sponsors were happy. So it has to do with sponsorship deals that have been signed over the years. So you don't just say, okay, because of COVID-19, you won't be hosting the Olympics. It's good that Tokyo has, the thing is taking place. We are going to see the opening ceremony today. And then the sponsors will now be happy that at least their investment, they will get return on investment.
How significantly do you see this pandemic affecting this Pandem Olympics?
Yes, it has already affected it. Come to look at it, this is the first Olympics in modern history where you will not have spectators. Not just the local spectators. At some point in time, they wanted the local fans to be part of the Olympics. But because of the state of emergency, even the local fans cannot be part of the Olympics. The opening ceremony today will be witnessed by less than 1,000 people, these VVIP guests, in a stadium that ordinarily should be seating about 80,000 spectators. So the pandemic has already affected it. But the important thing is that the games is going on at long last.
Okay. Well, Mr. Adetula, how do you see this? Do you see this pandemic affecting the performance of the athletes, in this global fiesta?
No, not at all. There is no how it affect them because if you look at them at the Games Village, they are in thousands, over 11,000 athletes at the village here, and when you go to your test, you go for your training, and everybody wants to participate at the Olympics. Like the IOC president said, he said Olympics is for participation. Fine, if you are winning, beautiful. But if you are not winning, better luck next time. So the athletes they are here, they are enjoying themselves. The only thing is that the normal hug, the normal shaking, whatever, that one, no, you don't do that. You don't hug yourself, you don't shake. But they still go together, to do things, do their training, go to the restaurant together, go to the gym together, train together, and what have you. So it won't really affect them. When it comes to competing, they're out there to compete. Please let me quickly correct something. I saw something on air there. I'm sorry. We have 60 athletes here in 10 sports because athletics we are 19 now. And we have one lady in swimming. So it means Nigeria is having 60 athletes and 10 participating in 10 sports. You understand? So please, let's quickly correct that because we are 60 here participating in 10 sports.
Okay, well, talking about the participation, bit that you mentioned, and the fact that the participation seems to carry a little more weight in perspective than winning. If we're going to go by what Mr. Alu has said here, billions of dollars are invested just to participate. I mean, there is also the money that Nigeria has invested in this. And then people are wondering, just how many medals have we even been able to recoup, so to speak, or win over the years, in spite of all of the investments that have been made? So winning will be an issue. Everybody else came to participate. What's wrong with us getting medals as well? What's your take on that?
Well, it's good to get medals because back home, even when we are playing friendly, even if it's football, even if it's basketball, if anything, whenever we are playing we are playing football and we play draw or lose, you know what it means to us as a nation. But interestingly, the athletes that we have out here, look at them from every of the sports, from table tennis, we have Aruna, we have Omotayo, African champion. Aruna is seeded 15 for this Olympics, so it means he won't play in round 1 and 2. We have Funke Oshonaike that is coming for her 7th time, so it means we have an African woman that is representing at the Olympics for the 7th times. In basketball, women and men, you see what they have done. The men are on fire. The women came in last night. They are raring to go. In athletics, this is the time for them to show themselves because they picked at the right time. So your athlete picking at the right time, going to the Olympics, it means they are coming to show the world that they are the best. Look at the badminton against all odds at the Olympics. We have African champions, and it has never happened before. So what is happening? Look at wrestling. We have number 2 in the world. We have number 1 in Africa. And gymnastics. Interestingly, a young man of 24 years old, doing 6 sports, and I spoke with him yesterday, and the guy told me that, you will see what will happen when the event starts tomorrow. So these guys are coming to town to say, we are ready to go. They are raring to go. And I think coming back to Nigeria in August, whatever shade of medals we'll bring back home. We'll bring back home, I can assure.
Okay, we're going to hold on to that, but let's come back to Lagos. I mean, we're going to talk about Nigeria's chances. I mean, 60 athletes across 10 sports. But, I mean, if you take a look at even the sports pages on the dailies this morning, they'll tell you Nigeria in search of 4th gold. And this is something we started in the 1950s. I mean, our first attendance was in the 1950s. And, I mean, we've attended every 4 years afterwards. And yes, participation is good, but if you could just retrospect a bit, why has it been so hard? I mean, Nigerians are talented, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just on the streets, you see how much talent you have. Why has it been so hard, just retrospecting really, to get our medals haul on?
Well, let me start by saying that my friend Femi Adetula said that this Olympics, that this is one Olympics where you see so many upsets. Because the fact that fans are not there will definitely affect a few things. Because the big stars, ordinarily, by the time you enter, if you've been to a typical Olympic game, by the time you enter the stadium, if you are a beginner, you will begin to shiver. But the symbols of this world will just come out there and you will be swallowed by the situation. But this time, the fans are not there, so you will see so many upsets. It will definitely affect the performance of the athletes. That I want to believe. We'll see it when the games start eventually. But coming back to Nigeria, the question you asked, since 1964, we've not been winning so much. The years will have so much talent. And if you look at it, let's take the basketball team, for instance. If we were to go to the Olympics with home-based basketballers, are we going to be competing? The answer is no. But because we are gone there with NBA stars, we'll have the best, we're giving them the exposure. They are out there in the United States and they are at their best. That is how we can compete. So it has to do with how much you have invested in sports. If you look at the facilities out there in Tokyo, you will marvel. So it is the level of investment that is a reflection of how many medals you win at the Olympics. We have the talent, but back home here, we don't have the facilities. So, but it is only when our talents, those raw talents, now go outside the shores of our country, it reflects even in our football. By the time a Nigerian player leaves the NPFL and goes to Europe, he becomes a superstar overnight. We saw that in Finidi George and all that. But because the facilities are not just here, that is why we are not getting at the highest, we are not competing at the highest level, at the world level. So that is just it.
Well, as disturbing as that sounds, Mr. Alu, there was something you referenced earlier. We'll probably even be able to take it to Mr. Adetula later as well. Over the years, I mean, 25 medals in all, top among where, you know, the sports in which we have won these medals are athletics. We've won 13 medals in all,
Yes.
2 gold, you know, in athletics. Football, we've had 1 gold and no other gold in any of the others, you know, listed, you know, on Wikipedia. And I'm just wondering, do you see a chance, a place where we specialize on a particular sport in order to better our chances? Yeah. Athletics, for instance, we have 13. The next closest in number is boxing, and that's where we won our first medal, you know, at all. But football is listed second because that's where we got gold in 1996. So,
and the bronze.
do you see, and the silver and the
Rio.
bronze later on,
Exactly.
do you see a situation where we specialize and say, okay, when it comes to this particular sport, give it to Nigeria?
Ordinarily, if you look at it, football is our #1 sport. You say, okay, after Brazil, give it to Nigeria. Then you talk about boxing. You mentioned boxing. Then you talk about athletics. These are areas where Nigeria have comparative advantage. But because of sports administration over the years, we keep fluctuating. Today, it is wrestling, just because we have a Daniel Igali that is getting it right for us in wrestling. By the time Igali leaves the scene, we nosedive. There was a certain Ade Ryoku who got it right for us in volleyball. The moment Ade Ryoku left the scene, basketball, volleyball nosedive in this country. So it has to do with the challenge of administration. But Nigeria has got the talents everywhere. Mention it, there's no sports where we cannot compete. It is just that we are not getting it right in terms of administration. If you come to look at it, if not for the fact that the present sports minister, for instance, Sunday Dare, decided to take the bull by the horn by taking Nigeria's preparation to the corporate world with the Adopt the Athlete campaign, maybe by now our athletes would have been looking for how to get money for funding to train ahead of the games. But because some corporate bodies have decided to adopt these athletes, they were able to settle down, prepare very well for the games, and that is why we have the chances of getting medals at these Olympics.
You know what beats me is the fact that sports is lucrative. I mean, a lot of people watch the EPL.
Exactly.
A lot of people watch other sports. You know, I mean, people are watching the Olympics. So why has it been hard? I'll take this back to Tokyo, but let me just ask you, why has it been hard to... I mean, it's a money maker naturally. So why is it hard to invest as much in it? I mean, we see how much we invest in other things. So why is it really hard to invest that much in sports?
It is because government has decided to hold on tenaciously to sports. By the time you take it to the private sector, I just mentioned it now that the present sports minister has tried as much as possible to woo the private sector. Sports is big business. It is capital intensive. It is not something that government will begin to invest their money on. You have to take it to the private sector. And by the time the private sector gets it, they pump money into it and they get return on investment.
But Mr. Alu, it wasn't the... What system did we all, you know, operate in the 70s and the 80s that gave us the Thunder Baloguns, the Segun Odegbamis, you know, the 1984 squad, and even then I think it was the 1988
yes.
squad.
Let me even answer
gold.
that. Chioma Ajunwa,
yes,
the only Olympic individual gold medalist that we have, If not for IGI, wouldn't and Shego Degbami wouldn't have gotten it right. It was not government initiative.
I'm talking about the football that you mentioned
even the dream team. Football, yeah, give it to it. They will have got all the talent. But come to look at it, even in Rio, where we got a bronze medal, if we had prepared very well, don't forget that at some point, our players were even ejected from the hotel, and that distracted them a lot. That team was capable of going all the way to win that gold medal if we had prepared very well for that Olympics. So that is where we come in. We need to invest more in sports. The corporate bodies, see, if we win gold medals today, at the end of this Olympics, so many corporate bodies will begin to congratulate these athletes. But the question you ask, what did you invest in? You now begin to do ambush marketing.
But it's a question. I mean, Kayode mentioned it, so let me help you, so to speak. Take this matter to Mr. Adetula. How do we get behind, or rather get ahead of this challenge? You've heard everything that Mr. Aluo has said here. And is it a question of funding, a question of administration, or what exactly is the issue? Because it's usually a good start, but sustaining it for generations, that's been a problem.
We've not tried as much as possible to prioritize sports in Nigeria, because sports, like Aluo said, sports is a big business. You don't have to pay lip service to sports. Talking about sport development, you have to put a lot of things into it. You start from the grassroots, and before you start from the grassroots, there must be infrastructure. Do we have infrastructure in Nigeria? Not just that you build a stadium. When you build your stadium, there must be equipment, for the athletes. You understand? So there are a lot of things you need to put in place for these athletes, to perform. It's more than saying we are going to the Olympics and you have to prepare athletes 1 or 2 weeks to the Olympics. No, Olympics takes 8 years for an athlete to prepare. If an Olympian, it takes an Olympian 8 years to perform. But back home, that is not what we practice. You understand? Thank God we count for 90 days for this Olympics. But it's an 8-year thing. By August 8th, it means the next Olympics is in France. You understand? So the preparation starts that day, that August 8th. But here, what we do is, like we used to say, we just rush into things. But we need to adequate planning.
But Mr. Adetula, why is that the situation? Yes. Just as you said, we always know that it's a 4-year program. It is coming. It's going to happen. So what is it that keeps us from doing the needful ahead of time?
Well, it's a let me say it's a Nigerian thing, because I think we so much believe in this fire brigade approach of doing things. I don't know why the government has not released sport, because we still see sport as a recreation. Sport is not recreation. Sport is big business. You understand? The attention you are paying to aviation, the attention you are paying to education, the attention you are paying to other sector is what you should pay, to sport. And when you pay big attention to sports, then it means, it's just for example, Surulere, the National Stadium in Surulere, fix it up, let there be light. You see, people will go there in the morning. You understand? When they go there in the morning, they won't leave there until 12 in the afternoon. The young minds, they won't leave there until afternoon. It means they will train from around 6:30 to around 7, around 12 in the afternoon. Then from there, they go back home. By around 3 or 4:30, they are coming back, because they know there is light there. They will train, there is light. You understand? And after training, they know there is something for them to eat. Then it means that takes them away from the street, because naturally, if there is light somewhere, electricity somewhere, it means they're able to charge their phone, they're able to sit down, they're able to discuss, they're able to watch television, they're able to do a lot of things. So when we build the system, it's the system we have to build. The organizational structure is not there. Until we put together the organizational structure, there's nothing we can do and talk about and call sports. That is just it.
And you sounded quite hopeful, really, when you were speaking about our chances in this Olympics. tell us, what did we at least get right in the build-up to this Olympics? For us to, or like, at least for you to be hopeful such that you think we'll win golds, what did we get right?
We have to give it to the sports minister and the Nigerian Olympic Committee, for trying to, see what they can do this time around. Because I think for a very long time, we've not seen the athletes being in camp for 90 days. They were in camp for 90 days, and after the 90 days in Nigeria, they brought them over to Japan in Kizarazu, for another 2 weeks. So looking at this, over 100 days. But aside that, the athletes outside Nigeria, they were preparing, and like Alo mentioned there, this issue of adopt an athlete that the Honorable Minister, brought on board. I think it worked for them. Then getting their grant from them from IOC and ANOCA, it works for them as well. Because over time, if these athletes, if you prepare them very well, you will see them, they will deliver. Naturally, Nigeria is blessed. I must confess. Naturally, we are blessed. But it's the man management that is the problem. But if we can put all this aside and say, okay, let's train these athletes the way they should be trained, the result, we will see the result.
I wonder what kind of conversation is ongoing regarding that, because for as long as I can remember, we've had this same conversation. Oh my goodness, fire brigade approach, we're just preparing 30 days, and it seems as though we go to sleep. And then the next 4 years, we're like, oh goodness, fire brigade approach. So what kind of conversation are we having at different levels? Maybe in terms of legislation, policies, and the rest, such that in the next 4 years, we'll not be having the same kind of conversation.
Well, I think what we should do is, that like you said, there should be a policy. There is no sports policy in Nigeria. Then that policy should be legislated. Because if there's no legislation, there's no how we can do it. Sports needs to be opened up. Because if you don't open it up, there is no how you can exert. Look at the league. Sometimes in Nigeria, I work with African, the largest. Oh, sorry to say this, the largest, this thing in Africa. You understand? I'm on here. Understand? So what I'm saying is, all these things we have to put together. You understand? So that we can promote sport and take it to the next level. It's not lip service. Look at the National Stadium in Nigeria, in Lagos. Look at the National Stadium in Abuja. Look at stadia everywhere across Nigeria. Are they really what we should have? No. So the sports policy, there must be sports policy, then a legislation that says, okay, sports is a big business, not recreation.
So that's a major point you raised there, and it's okay. Hearing that noise, that's what they mean by the camp is bubbling, I guess. If you could give us figures, really, about what to expect as we, start winding down regarding medals now. 60 athletes across 10 sports. What is the list? I'm putting you on the spot on purpose. What is the least Nigerians should expect in terms of gold, silver, and bronze?
Fine. Yourself, you say you are putting me this is just too hot for me now. But I know no matter the color of the medal, let me take wrestling. I know wrestling. The wrestling number one. Yeah. So wrestling, basketball, I can assure you that table tennis and athletics, there is no how we have Odwan Adekore in wrestling. We have Aaron Akwadri in table tennis. The two basketball team, men and women, are very hot. Then the athletics, we have Okagbare. We have what's his name now? Eze Bruman, and a lot of them are there. You understand? Even why not? Even this morning here in Tokyo, our young girl went on the waters, and she came fifth in her event. So tomorrow morning, we are looking forward to seeing her, qualifying for the quarterfinals. So no matter shade of the medals, Nigeria will win and bring back home.
Well, please remain on that spot, because I mean, since Kade has put you in that red spot, so I'm going to keep you there for a little while longer. I noticed you didn't mention boxing, which was the first sport wherein we won a medal.
Boxing, we didn't qualify for boxing.
Is it because of that same Nigerian, fire brigade thing that we didn't qualify?
No. The issue of COVID-19 really affected a lot of our preparation, because when we were supposed to travel for the boxing thing, we couldn't travel because of the measures, the COVID-19 measures that were put in place. Even judo, we were supposed to qualify for judo. But boxing, most Olympics, boxing is where we have our medals. But this Olympics, we couldn't travel for the qualification, and you know what it means. In certain clients, they don't look at you. If when you're not there, you're not there. That's what cost us that boxing slot.
Painful when I hear, sincerely very painful when I hear Sena climbs. Does that mean that we are not a sane climb? I remember, Mr. Lu, forgive me for taking us, back in time, so to speak. You've talked about, and he has also referenced, the need to see sports for what it is, big business. I remember USFON, the Youth Sports Federation of Nigeria, which formed the core of the gold-winning Golden Eaglets of Nigeria in 1985. How helpful do you see such a thing being in the process of government withdrawing its stranglehold on sports and really, diving in head on to make it work?
The only way to work is this: for those of us who are into sports, government should create the enabling environment. Once you create the enabling environment, if there is no rancor, then put the facilities in place. That is the role of government. Once they put the facilities in place, like Adetula rightly pointed out, we don't even have stadium in Nigeria, what you should call modern stadium. That is why even basketball, we can't even organize any NBA, any basketball competition in Nigeria. But look at Kigali, Rwanda of all places, where that is now the new destination for basketball. So we need to come back home, create the enabling environment by putting the facilities in place, and then creating the enabling environment. Then the private sector can pump money into our sports. Because once we create the enabling environment, the private sector will buy into it. Because government itself is not putting so much into sports. Come to look at it, it is only the sports ministry and the women development ministry that get the list of budget from government. Envelope. That is what the sports sector gets. And then, this is the only sector, interestingly, that is competing at the world level. Mention any other sector. We are talking about Nigeria competing and going for gold medal, silver, and bronze. Mention any other sector where Nigeria can go and compete at the world level. None, except for sports. So we need to invest heavily in sports because we've got the talent. All that our athletes need is just that enabling environment for them to take their talent to the highest level. This country is massively blessed, I must tell you.
Absolutely. For what it's worth, we're rooting for our athletes, clearly. So do you see us winning our 4th gold and maybe perhaps another medal?
Realistically, we're competing in 10 sports. But realistically, we have chances in athletics. We have chances in wrestling. Realistically, athletics, wrestling, and then of late, basketball. Because if you look at the stars that we've taken, NBA stars, and if you look at the pre-Olympic games that the Tigers played, if you can beat USA in a pre-Olympic tournament, if you can beat Argentina, and then you now know that if you beat world number 1 and world number 4, and that is the cynosure of all eyes. We are not going with football. So basketball is the in thing. Nigerians will keep awake, especially from Sunday, to watch the Tigers play. I see them going all the way. And it will be wonderful to see the Tigers. I see them winning a medal. I see Esebrume, Blessing Okagbari, based on current form, getting us medal. 4x400 meters women, we could get a medal. And then, I don't see how Adonayo Odukoroye will not win a medal and Blessing Oborodudu in wrestling. So realistically, these are the places. Then don't rule out the little girl in Taekwondo. She has done so well. She could become another Chonwa Ajunwa at the end of the day.
We expect the best for them, clearly, and we wish them the very best. Mr. George Alu, thank you so much for your thoughts on this, as well as Mr. Femi Adetula. Yes, we're counting down to that opening ceremony. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful afternoon, even as we have a beautiful morning here in Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. God bless Nigeria.
All right, so we always talk about your own contribution to the program. So here it is. Let's begin with this one by Ahmed Shua, who is talking about the Tokyo Olympics. Nigeria has brighter chances to win medals at the Tokyo Olympics because the government has given our contingent all the support they needed, and the athletes have prepared fully. Let all Nigerians help them with prayers. Well,
Ashinawa Kingsley, still on the Olympics. Nigeria is a country blessed with human resources in all ramifications. But what about development of these human capital? Well, most of our athletes achieve success with little or no help from their motherland. That's another perspective. They're being owed allowances, poorly compensated, while some are forced to switch allegiance. Sport remains a unifying factor for Nigeria, and that alone should encourage us to invest.
Success says on the same issue, while wishing the Nigerian athletes the best of luck, I hope our sports administrators will always remember that luck is a byproduct of hard work and proper preparation. God bless Nigeria.
Well, Oluwaseun Raji, clearly a lot of Nigerians are interested in the Olympics, right? It says that for the Olympics, it is absolutely unusual to have the apex of sporting events without fans. The capital-intensive nature requires a circulatory system where tourists and fans throng the sporting venue to celebrate their heroes and boost the local economy. For Nigeria, athletics, wrestling, table tennis, and basketball are my key focus. I'm rooting for them to shine and add more medals.
Well, so many other mails. We've have your mail here, Frank. You're talking about the Petroleum Industry Bill, as well as Abiodun and a number of others that have also sent in mails. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the end of the show today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And I'm Kayode Kikielu. Goodbye.